What I want to do is point out, start off within this context. What is the government shutdown, the Boston school bus protest, the Detroit Assembly, and the migrant rights struggle have to do with each other? Of course, everything. As you can see, here are some women struggling protesting against the government shutdown. The Boston school bus drivers, which I don't know if you can see it. I can't see it from here. Can y'all see it? Okay, great. And two Boston school bus drivers, the Detroit March, and in the last few weeks, there have been a rise of demonstrations in the immigrant rights movement, including 100 women, many of them undocumented, who chained themselves to places in Washington, and that's a picture of them to the far right. Okay? And the second important question is, what does all this have to do with the party? And this is what I want to talk about tonight. The struggle for migrant rights is at a crossroads. And I don't think I have time to go over what's happened since 2005 to today, but it is important, to highlight some of it. And it's especially important because the movement is at a crossroad, and it's important for the party to deepen its understanding of this important struggle. We all remember that in 2005, the government under the Bush administration, tried to push the Sensenbrenner bill, and the movement erupted. Millions of workers and their advocates came out and defeated Sensenbrenner in 2006, and it was an important and historical time. We know that Arizona, the way that things evolved with 287G, the government outsourced immigration and gave states a lot of power to carry out anti-immigrant and anti-worker policies, and Arizona became the ground zero for much of the repression and the racism, and of course much of the resistance. We should remember that Arizona was the last state, or one of the last states, to pass the Martin Luther King holiday, that it's so racist and so reactionary that it refused, as long as it could, to pass MLK Day. And the repression and the developments in Arizona take place at a time when the Clinton administration and others built a 7,000 mile fence that created a funnel effect, which is this picture right here, and meant that migrants who had normally been going through California and other places were now going to Arizona, which was more dangerous, it was hotter, and it was also more reactionary. So, again, this is what's going on. So fast forward to the recent period, everything that immigrants and their supporters have marched for since 2006 has, of course, been declined, denied. What is on the table right now, not likely to pass, but it is what passed through the Senate, not likely to pass through the House, is SB 744, which is called the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, Immigration Modernization Act, which is everything that the movement has called for. I mean, the opposite of what we have been marching for. The implementation of SB 744, let's make it clear that whether the bill passes or not, anti-immigrant policies have been strengthened, are being applied every day, and whether the bill passes or not is really just sort of a red herring to what's actually going on every day in the immigrant and migrant community. So one of the reasons why it's important to talk about this bill is that it has everything to do with the movement, in that last week there was many demonstrations in 40 cities across the country. There was demonstrations around the country where many of the progressive, many of them union-based, union-supported organizations marched to pass so-called comprehensive immigration reform. And it is wonderful that there's this movement. However, the kind of legislation that they're calling for is really, and pushing and supporting, is really quite dangerous and really quite ominous. And it shows that there's a vacuum among the left and the more revolutionary and more class-conscious forces. They exist, they're there, but we're not in enough connection and enough networking together. Right now, despite the passage of this bill, there's huge profits being made from the deportations and especially the detention of migrants. And I'll show you some figures of what's going on. And huge profits are made from not only the detentions, but unpaid labor, from stolen wages. We were at a protest last Sunday of workers who were owed $50,000 in back pay, and they've been struggling for over a year to demand these wages, and they're still marching, and they went to the boss's house. So that was a lot of fun to go to his house, and we really should do a lot more of that ourselves. Go to the boss's house, I like that. Anyway, so one of the most dangerous parts about SB 744 is, of course, the militarization of the border, and there's so many organizations that are protesting and have really taken class-conscious positions on this, and one of those is the Alliance for Global Justice. And I bring this up because the Alliance for Global Justice has a really important conference that's taking place in Tucson in a couple of weeks in early November, and many of us are going to that, and it's a very important event, we hope, and see it as an opportunity to support especially the work of the Tucson branch there, Comrade Paul in particular. Many cases of vicious, violent brutality similar to what happened to Trayvon Martin is going on every day. Here's a brother, Carlos Lamadrid, who was killed by the Border Patrol, shot in the back, and his killer was allowed to go free. So one of the things that May 1st and other organizations, but not enough, to be quite frank, not enough organizations are connecting the struggles, and not enough are doing enough work to really build solidarity with other organizations that don't focus on immigration, and it's very important. There's really no other way to win. And that's one of the things that was important about the EMA conference that we attended last week, where there was 300 or 400 people from around the world who came to support the International Migrant Alliance event. And there was some, efforts to make connections to other struggles. If you consider that 2.5 million people have been deported, and you remember that 2.5 million people are incarcerated, that affects a lot of workers. And if there was more coordination and more unity between these two sectors of our class, it would be a very powerful movement. Here's an example of the May 1st unity, when we had a flyer that linked the Trayvon struggle with Carlos Lamadrid. I'm going to pass by some of this. Okay. It's in June of this year, this is important, the U.S. Senate voted to allocate $46 billion to border security, so that even though the legislation is not being passed, $46 billion is being spent. When the government shut down, detentions and raids continued. It was one part of the government that still was operating. What was not operating was the part where workers could go and appeal their cases. That part was not open. So, of course, the deportations and the detentions continued, and the right to hear your case in court was declined, of course. Here's some cool cartoons to sort of elaborate what the bill is all about. In case you can't read it, it's the one on the top. It's an immigration deal that opens a path to citizenship while extending the border fence. And that's you're supposed to go through it. The one on the right, I can't even read it. Here's your path to citizenship. Thank you. Follow the road, and along the way, do low-cost landscape. That's, and the thing with these cartoons is, of course, they have a Republican representative there, but the Democrats are the same. I mean, they're not fighting. We have to remember that the deportations that have happened under President Obama are the greatest amount of deportations that have ever happened in all of U.S. history. So here's a, can't show this picture in too many places, but I think I could show it here. Deporter in chief. You see a lot of that, you know. Again, you know, the detentions. I'm going to skip by this one. Another cool cartoon. I think I liked it better when our ranch is only being overrun by undocumented, at least they were just passing through. Here's the Border Patrol, and this is what is happening down there. Again, path to citizenship. Some generous estimations say that perhaps 2 million migrants are going to get legalized under the bill. I mean, it's not likely to pass. I think it's a very generous estimate. I don't think it'll be that much at all. Now, even with the horrific anti-immigrant climate that has been taken on in the last few years, nonetheless, you know, immigrants are not going to stop coming. And here's an example of on the Mexican and Guatemala border, the workers are forced to get on this train, and it is this humanitarian crisis. Not only do workers die all the time, but there's a whole industry of workers who have lost arms and legs, and just, you know, it's just a real human tragedy. So everyone refers to the train that people get on as La Bestia, the beast. And again, there was another accident recently. So no matter what the climate is, workers, because they have no choice and because of U.S. economic policies such as NAFTA and so forth, are forced to come. There is, as we all know, this humongous, horrible worldwide economic crisis. And so that has resulted in this worldwide war against migrants. And this is an important figure. 20 years ago, the number of workers living outside their homelands was 155 million. Today it is 213 million workers. Is that right? Yeah, 213. And we know that last week 300 people died when a ship sank off the coast of Italy. There was another accident today, and more workers on their way to Italy died. You know, it's really, I mean, this happens all the time. This is going on all the time, you know, where workers are dying. You know, so many families will never know what happened to their sisters and brothers, family members. So the EMA conference last week was very important. I want to make sure the party knows that there's a move within the immigrant rights movement to change the language and not call immigrants immigrants any longer, but instead migrants. And I think it's a very important trend, because if you look what the dictionary says, an immigrant is a person who comes to a country to live in another nation, but a migrant is a worker who's forced to go from one place to another, especially to find a job. And I think that's correct. And one of the things that came out of the EMA conference, and where a lot of organizations are talking about, is to have actions on December the 10th, which is International Human Rights Day, December 18th, which is International Migrant Day, and of course May Day. And this is important because you know, the forces who have the most resources, the nonprofits and the unions, of course, are in the streets, are doing good things, but, you know, don't have the class view that many of us do. And they're getting very comfortable around May Day. And it will be important for the more class-conscious elements, like May 1st, like the party, like the PPA, to not let that happen. You know, we know we need unity, and we need to share, you know, May Day because it's Workers' Day, but we don't want to lose the program to them entirely. And so it's very important to continue to organize and resist among the migrant movement and, of course, among all sectors. So here's some great examples of demonstrations that are going around. There's a lot of actions going on. We can't forget about the students and young people who went into Mexico, crossed back into the U.S. in defiance of legislation and said, I'm undocumented, I'm unafraid. I mean, there's a lot of very important militant civil disobediences and actions that are going on that are very, very important. So I want to end up with this. I wasn't sure. Alex pointed out, it looks like they're drunk. And I thought, well, I mean, who's to say they didn't party? I mean, you know. So I left it in there because I thought, we party. So, and I just liked it. So, you know, the role of a party is so important, you know, in the most thoughtful way, influencing and leading and directing the class struggle. And you know, I think the work of the migrant rights struggle is a good example of the friends and the influence that we have won in there. You know, we could just go on and on about it. But the best example, I think, is our Boston Comrades. Because, you know, these comrades have gone to Haiti, have gone to Colombia. Here they are on a demonstration on Egypt. So not only are they honest, genuine, militant, class-conscious leaders, but they're internationalists, and they are union leaders who have politically educated the workers with the paper and with, you know, actions like this, and taking, you know, some of the workers to, you know, on these international trips. You know, it's part of deepening the roots among the working class. And so I think that's why it's no coincidence that you have, you know, you saw the articles that you saw this week about Steve and the other comrades, because they have really dug in there for decades. And I'm not going to try to go into that because that's, you know, comrades are going to talk about that more. But I do think that that's really important what they've done. And so not only do we want to, you know, build a party and take the lead of union members like our Boston Comrades and others, but we also want to build the PPA. And it's so important, and that's why, you know, the October 24th action is so important. And finally, the party conference, where we're going to put it all together. Isn't this fun? I had so much fun. And I think it, you know, you get visually stimulated. So I want to just end with that. You know, the May 1st Coalition, in a way, is going through its own transition. And we need, as a party, to make sure that the coalition continues to thrive and be dynamic. And, you know, this is a plug for you to come to the fundraiser next Saturday, but also to remember that soon we've got to start, you know, organizing for May Day, because we don't want to let the Social Democrats control 100% that day. And the fundraiser is going to be fun. Not only are we going to have Marina, but we're also going to have a Garifuna sister performing, and another person playing the guitar. A couple of people are going to be playing guitar, and it's going to be great. And on to all our work, and the October 24th and the party conference. Thank you.